secretaries about the next 100 days, which we think is incredibly important as we move forward with this rest of this year, unleashing more infrastructure, clean energy, manufacturing investments across the country, and our work, let's not forget, to curb gun violence as well, and also what we're seeing across the country on what's the attacks that we're seeing on women's reproductive rights. So that certainly will be part of the conversation that you all will hear and see from the president tomorrow.
Also,
Go ahead. Yes.
Journalists at Gannett newspapers are on strike today. Just wondering if the president has any message for them. Does he support them?
So, as you know, the president, when it comes to these types of issues, he clearly hopes that they continue to have the conversation and they come together in good faith. And certainly, he always supports in this particular journalist to make sure that they get a fair share here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. Picking up on the cabinet meeting, does the president still have confidence that Julie Su can get approved to be his cabinet secretary?
Yes, yes, he has confidence that she will get through, and as you can imagine, that she has the support of this administration to get her through, to get her confirmed. She will be in attendance tomorrow. As you know, she's the acting secretary of the Department of Labor, and he has confidence, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that she actually becomes secretary.
He nominated her at the end of February. It's now June. So what is he doing to help speed this process up?
Well, look, Julie Su, as you've heard me say many times from here, was confirmed, supported as a deputy secretary at the Labor by all Senate Democrats. That occurred when the first time she went through this process, clearly as deputy, and has garnered the support of businesses, labor, several organizations across the spectrum. If you think about Jean Soroka, the executive director of Port of Los Angeles, recently wrote that Julie Su is a consensus builder whose impact has played out in real time throughout the supply chain industry. For these reasons, among others, no one is better suited nor better qualified than Julie Su for the job of Secretary of Labor. So this is a full court press to get Julie confirmed. Outside groups continue to also push her forward, and certainly she will get the support from the White House as well and from this president. So we are confident, and we're going to continue moving forward.
The last thing on this topic, does the president feel after the debt ceiling negotiations that he has a little cachet here to use with moderate Democrats such as Senators Manchin and Sinema?
Well, look, I mean, if you look at the last 2 years of what this president, more than 2 years now, what this president has been able to do, the bill that he signed into law just a couple of days ago, the budget negotiations agreement, that was number 350 bipartisan piece of legislation, and so he's able to get that done when people said that he would not be able to get that done, which is bring both sides together. And he's worked with Democrats across the ideological spectrum over the past 2 years as well to get things done. You think about the Inflation Reduction Act, that is something that Senator Manchin, right? He steered that through, and something that the president worked very closely with him on. You think about the American Rescue Plan. There's been many times where you've seen Democrats come together to deliver for the American people, and let's not forget the bipartisanship that this president, and because of his leadership, has been able to do. So yes, he believes that we can continue to get things done, and there's a long list of legislative agenda that he wants to see done. As I just mentioned, gun reform as being one of them. As I mentioned, reproductive rights as being another, and many other ways that he believes that we can continue to deliver for the American people. Go ahead.
Just another labor issue. The National Retail Federation has asked the White House to intervene in the stalled West Coast port negotiations, or labor negotiations there. Do you have intention of doing that? Are you concerned that the problem there could actually exacerbate the supply chain issues that you have just gotten ahead of?
So look, certainly we're monitoring these discussion or this situation very closely, and we're going to continue to monitor. That's what we've been doing. And so the way that we see our role here is we know that the parties who are negotiating, as we know, negotiations are very hard, as we've talked about many times from here in the last couple of weeks, but they have overcome some major sticking points already and are continuing to address most difficult issues right now. But what we see is the best way to move forward is for both sides, or for all sides, to continue to work to come to the table and come to a solution here. And so that's what we are going to continue to encourage all parties to work in good faith toward a mutually beneficial resolution that ensures that workers get the fair benefits, quality of life, and wages that they deserve. And that's what we believe that we're going to continue to be very vocal about.
Can I ask you about the latest flight of migrants, this time to Sacramento? I understand that the White House, the state authorities are investigating where that flight originated and who paid for the flight to go, whether there was some involvement by Florida. Are you in close touch with the California authorities, and do you have any initial findings now?
So yes, we are in close touch with state officials on the issue that you just laid out. Look, as you just mentioned, Andrea, there is an investigation currently happening, and so certainly we'll refer you to them on any specifics on the outcome of what they're looking at. And so I've said it many times from here, repeatedly from this podium, that busing or flying migrants around the country without any coordination with the federal government, we've talked about this, state or local officials as well, is dangerous and unacceptable. And we'll continue to be very, very clear about that. It is dangerous and unacceptable because you're putting people's lives at risk, and it's dangerous and unacceptable because you're actually putting a lot of pressure on these states and local areas. And so again, we're in touch with state officials to offer any assistance that they may need, but I would refer you to them on any specifics on the investigation. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Thanks,
and I'll come to that.
One of the results of these budget and debt ceiling negotiations, beyond averting default, seems to have been that there's a bit more goodwill that's been built up between the president and Speaker McCarthy and their teams. So I'm wondering, do you guys see any opportunities for bipartisan legislation going forward, and what is next on this administration's legislative agenda?
Look, like I said, we've seen under this president, there's been about 350 pieces of bipartisan legislation that this president has signed into law. Many of those were historic pieces of legislation. When you think about the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, Inflation Reduction Act, all these pieces of legislation that's going to create good-paying jobs, lower healthcare costs for Americans, lower energy costs for Americans, CHIPS and Science Act, when we think about manufacturing jobs, creating manufacturing jobs in this country. So look, these are all important things, important issues that the president wants to continue to work on, to continue to implement. And I talked about the gun reform. We believe that there is a common sense approach here that we can move forward and work with Congress on. Reproductive rights, we believe that this is something that we need to continue to work very hard towards, making sure that the wealthy pay their their fair share as well, and not just leave it on the little guy. And so look, we're going to continue to work on an economy that works for everyone. We're making sure that we build it from the bottom up, middle out. Those are the things that the president feels that he needs to continue to work towards. And so, yeah, there are places that we see that could be a bipartisanship here. If we're really serious about the deficit, really serious about making sure that we reduce the deficit, the president put forth a budget plan March 9th on how we can reduce the deficit by $3 trillion in the next 10 years. And so, yeah, there are ways that we believe that we can move forward here with Congress.
Any plans for the president and the speaker to meet again in a non-crisis, non-emergency setting?
No plans yet.
And secondly, last night during a CNN town hall, former Governor Nikki Haley suggested that allowing transgender girls into female locker rooms is driving up suicidal thoughts among teenage girls. Wondering if you have any comment.
So, look, I'm not going to go beyond what we've talked about when it comes to Department of Education, when it comes to this president, as it relates to that particular issue. But look, I think more broadly, what we have seen from Republicans just across the country as it relates to transgender youth, as it relates to the LGBTQI+ community, we've seen more than 600 bills. Many of those are targeted at transgender youth. And that is something that the president's going to continue to speak out against. It is appalling what we're seeing, the hate, the attack on this community. And so the president's going to be very clear that he supports the LGBTQ+ community. This is Pride Month, as you know. He's going to continue to lift up the community and all their accomplishments, celebrate them. And so I'll just leave it there for now.
Thanks, Karine.
Nikki Haley also last night refused to answer a question about whether she would sign a bill for a 6-week abortion ban if it came to her desk, saying that the administration has not yet outlined their position on whether they would sign bills allowing abortions at 37, 38, 39 weeks. Could you give us the sort of correct position of the administration in terms of what kind, if any, kinds of restrictions on abortion the administration supports?
So I didn't watch this town hall, so can't really speak to exactly what she said. What I can speak to, what the president has said, which is that he will continue to call on Congress to restore Roe v. Wade. And so if you know the particulars of Roe v. Wade, you see what the president stands. So I'll just leave it there for now.
And one other one on Nikki Haley. She also said that a vote for President Biden is a vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. What do you say to anyone who is questioning whether the president would survive a full 4-year term?
So let me just say this. I'm not going to comment on the 2024. She is a candidate, so I want to be very careful here. And we do follow the Hatch Act, so I want to be really, really mindful here. Look, this is a president, if you look at his track record, and I'm saying this more broadly, if you look at what he's been able to do, he has been able to push forward and get done historic pieces of legislation. He has gotten more done than any other president. When you think about the infrastructure legislation, when you think about the last president, it was a joke. We were talking about Infrastructure Week. It was literally a joke. Now you hear this president talking about infrastructure decade. When you think about for Medicare, being able to negotiate and lower cost for Americans, that matters. That matters to the American people. When you think about actually creating jobs, good paying jobs, which is part of this president's economic policy, that matters to the American people. The president literally just was able to get done a bipartisan agreement on the budget, which many people didn't think he would be able to get done. And this president was able to get done. So look, this is a president that's been attacked during 2020, where people said, oh, he's not gonna win. He's not able to get it done. There's no way he's gonna be the next president, and he made it happen. In 2022, the same thing. There's going to be a red wave. It's not going to happen. Democrats are in trouble, and look what happened. And because of what the president was able to go and do and make sure that there was a message out there that Americans can see on what he's been able to do and what Democrats were able to do, he really had one of the best midterm outcome for a new Democratic president in 60 years. In 60 years. And so, look, I'll leave you with a quote here. Here's something that I think that was said a couple days ago. It's a Huffington Post headline. After calling Joe Biden senile, Republicans complain he outsmarted them. I'll leave it there. Okay.
But to follow up on this, because the other argument that was being made in that comment by that candidate is that a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Vice President Harris to possibly become president. Does the White House see those continued attacks from Republicans and, frankly, comments from Democrats concerned about that as sexist, racist, politically convenient?
So, look, going to be really careful. 2024, I'm not going to speak to 2024 from here. What I can speak to, what I'll say more broadly, is that the Vice President has been a partner. Has been a partner to this president. You've heard him say that multiple times. When it comes to difficult decisions, when it comes to important decisions that matter to the American people, this is something that those are issues that the president has talked to with the vice president. And so you've heard him say that. You've seen her do that out there on the road, or whether it's even here speaking to different issues that are incredibly important to the American people. So I will leave it there, but not going to go into a tit for tat. What does this mean? What is this outcome going to be? What I'll speak to is what I know here in this White House and how they have worked very closely to get all of the things that I just laid out get done on behalf of the American people.
I had one other. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee says they're going to vote to hold the FBI director in contempt on Thursday for withholding documents about some uncorroborated corruption allegations dating back to when the president was vice president. Does the White House have any comment on the Oversight Committee's continued focus on this?
So I would have to refer you to the FBI. They've actually put out a statement on this, and I would refer you to them. All right. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine.
You mentioned Pride Month a minute ago. I wanted to ask, the Pentagon announced last week that it will no longer allow drag shows to be hosted at military facilities. Did the President or the White House, were they consulted at all on this decision? Or do you have any response to what it says that was announced, as the White House is trying to celebrate Pride Month?
So that was a DOD decision, so questions related to that, certainly I would refer you to them. I'll say a couple of things here. I want to start out by saying that this is a president who is proud of the LGBTQI people serving in our nation's military. As Secretary Austin has expressed in his Pride Month statement that he put out just last week, the Biden-Harris administration will celebrate LGBTQI plus service members' contributions during Pride with Pride across federal agencies, including at the Department of Defense. And also, as the Secretary said last week as well in his statement, and I'll quote him, "Who you love or how you identify has nothing to do with how bravely you fight for our country." And so again, they make these decisions, the DOD makes these decisions independently, so I would have to refer to you, to them on any specific questions. Go ahead, Ed, in the back.
Thanks. I can ask you about China, if I could. So the president says we're in a competition with China. He's been in office 28 months. Are we winning the competition?
So I would point you to the 800,000 manufacturing jobs that were created here. I would point you to the Chips and Science Act that was bipartisan, that the president was able to get done to make sure that we bring back jobs here. I would point you to, as you always ask me, about our economy and how it's growing. More than 13 million jobs created, unemployment at a record low. And so the president has done the work to make sure that we bring those jobs back. You see the investment. We talk about investing in America, and the president is able to talk about that and go around the country laying that out because of what we've been able to do, historic pieces of legislation to prove that point that I'm making.
So he feels like we're winning that competition.
What we feel like is we are in a place where we are have created an economy that the president hopes that will work for everyone, that we don't leave anyone behind, that we create good paying jobs, that we have manufacturing come back to America, and we see that. We see those investments. We see companies saying that they're willing to invest and create jobs. We see the 800,000 manufacturing jobs out of the 13 million jobs that this president was able to create in just 2 years. In just 2 years, that's historical. No other president has been able to do that even in 4 years. And so, yes, we're going to continue to be competitive, and I think that's incredibly important to the American people and to how we see the economy moving forward for this country. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.